The rain that night did not simply fall. It roared, hammered the highway, drowned the sky, and turned the world into a blurry sheet of silver and noise. Headlights were weak candles against the storm, and tires fought for grip on a road that no longer understood the word safe. He was on that road that Adrian Hale, at the time just a young man with big dreams and an empty wallet, was driving home from yet another job interview that led nowhere. His fingers gripped the steering wheel, knuckles pale, eyes heavy with exhaustion. He had been searching for opportunities for months, taking buses, walking miles, sitting in waiting rooms where no one looked at him twice. He had come to believe that success was a door that only opened for the already privileged. And that night, he was tired. Too tired. A flash of lightning struck the sky. A truck swerved ahead. Brakes screamed. Metal collided. And everything went black. Adrian awoke to the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the bitter sting of antiseptic filling the air. His body felt like shattered glass held together by pain. Every movement burned. Every breath was a battle. He was in a small community hospital, the kind held up more by effort than funding. White paint peeling on the walls, ceiling fans wobbling as they spun, and the smell of medicine hanging like thick air. But beside him stood a woman. Not young, not old, but carrying a kindness that softened her features. Nurse Miriam Kalu. She checked his pulse with a patience carved from years of compassion. Her voice was gentle, the kind that carried healing before medicine ever arrived. "You're safe," she whispered, laying a cool hand over his. "You made it. You're still here." Adrian tried to speak, but pain swallowed his words. "Hush," she soothed. "Don't rush. One breath at a time. You survived something many don't." She sat beside him, refusing to walk away even when her shift ended. Even when her colleagues told her to rest. Even when exhaustion tugged at her bones. That night she stayed. She wiped the sweat from his forehead. She whispered prayers when his breathing became weak. She whispered hope when his spirit dimmed. "Your life is not done yet, my son," she murmured. "You will rise from this. You will build something. I don't know what, but I see it in your eyes." Adrian closed his eyes. For the first time in a long time, he believed her. Days passed. Miriam brought him meals when he couldn't eat. She spoke to him when silence felt heavy. She held his hand when the pain became unbearable. She didn't care that he was broke. She didn't care that the hospital bill would be impossible for him to pay. She cared that he lived. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled softly across the bed, Adrian spoke, voice weak but clear. Why are you doing this?" Miriam smiled, a tired, motherly smile. "Because kindness is never wasted." She smoothed the blanket across his chest. "And because one day you will help someone too. Maybe even in a way I never could." Her words sank into him like seeds finding fertile soil. When he finally stood again, thin, bruised, and walking slowly, he found her in the hallway. Her uniform was wrinkled. Her eyes were tired. Her hair was tied in a loose bun that had survived hours of rushing between patients. "Miriam," he said softly. She turned and her eyes warmed, took her hands, gently, reverently. "I don't have anything to give you now," he said, voice thick with emotion. "But I will never forget you. One day I'll return and thank you properly. I promise." She squeezed his hands. "My son, your life is thanks enough. Just live well." They smiled at each other through quiet tears. And then life, as it always does, moved forward. Doors opened. Opportunities came. Adrian worked, he fought, rose. One job led to another. One idea led to a business. One business led to an empire. Soon the world knew his name. Adrian Hale, founder and CEO, man of wealth, influence, power. He shook hands with presidents, he dined with royalty, he spoke on stages that echoed with applause. But sometimes, late at night, when the world fell silent, and the city lights glimmered below his penthouse window, he remembered a small hospital room. The smell of antiseptic, a warm hand holding his, a voice that believed in him before he believed in himself. Nurse Miriam Kalu. The woman he owed everything to, a debt unpaid, a promise unfinished. And though years had passed, some kindnesses never fade. They brand the heart forever. The world now knew Adrian Hale as a man who had conquered everything he once thought unreachable. Glass towers carried his name. Newspapers called him visionary. Television anchors called him the billionaire who built himself. People saw power when they looked at him, but what they did not see was the quiet emptiness behind his eyes. Success had filled his pockets, but somewhere along the way, it had emptied his life. Had a mansion large enough to echo his footsteps, he had a dining table long enough to seat 30, but most nights, he ate alone. He had everything he once prayed for. Yet something in him felt unfinished, unanchored, untouched. The world cheered for Adrian Hale, but no one knew him. One afternoon, while his driver navigated through a quieter part of the city, Adrian asked to walk. He liked to take walks sometimes. It reminded him how to breathe as he passed rows of old buildings, peeling paint, narrow corridors, and lives pressed close by struggle. He heard raised voices, a landlord, loud, impatient, angry, a young woman, firm, determined, holding her ground. And though she stood small compared to him, her posture held dignity, not surrender. Her name, though Adrian did not know it yet, was Alara Kalu. Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from the weight she carried. "I just need one more week," she said, clutching a brown envelope with medical documents. "My mother's treatment was more expensive this month. I'm not refusing to pay, I'm asking for time." The landlord scoffed. "No time. Pay now or leave. I'm tired of your excuses." Alara swallowed hard but did not bow, and Adrian paused. Something about her, the resolve, the sincerity, the quiet strength, pulled him toward her before his mind even formed the decision. He stepped forward calmly. "How much is owed?" he asked. Both of them turned to him, surprised. "It's none of your concern," the landlord snapped, but Adrian's gaze remained steady, calm, controlled. "How much?" The landlord hesitated, then named the figure. Adrian reached into his coat, removed a checkbook, one most men would never see, and wrote the full amount without blinking. He handed it over. The landlord's tone changed instantly, sugary and humble. He walked away with the speed of someone escaping grace before it changed its mind. Alara stood still, stunned. Her eyes glistening, but she refused to cry, not in public. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "I know," Adrian replied, "but I wanted to." She studied his face, expecting arrogance. There was none, just quiet sincerity. "I'll pay you back," she said. "No," he replied gently. "It's not a debt. It's simply help." Her shoulders loosened, not in relief, but in recognition. He did not help her because she was weak, helped her because she was trying. They spoke for a while on the sidewalk. Alara explained she was working 2 jobs while pursuing a part-time course in public health. Her mother, her world, had been unwell for years. Treatments came and went. Strength came and left again. Adrian listened. Really listened. "You're remarkable," he said quietly. She laughed, a soft, tired laugh. "I'm just surviving." He paused, thinking. "My foundation helps people like your mother," he said. "And I need someone who understands kindness the way you do." She blinked, unsure she heard right. "You're offering me a job? If you'll accept it." Her eyes softened. "Yes." It was the kind of yes spoken not with excitement, but with hope. Weeks turned into months. Alara joined his foundation, and it began to change. Projects became more human. Budgets became more compassionate. Adrian began to see the world again, not through numbers, but through lives. And Alara saw the man behind the empire, not the billionaire, not the public figure, but the boy who once fell and learned to stand again. They ate lunch together sometimes, walked in the company garden when meetings ran long, talked about simple things, chai tea, evening skies, the weight of caring too much. Tea was not sudden, tea was not dramatic, tea was soft, slow, real, the kind of love that grows by presence, not performance, not loud joy, not grand gestures, just the quiet warmth of presence. Alara and Adrian moved like 2 souls learning to breathe in the same rhythm. Coffee shared between meetings. Soft laughter over paperwork. Evenings where silence felt comfortable instead of awkward. Adrian did not announce his feelings, he lived them, and the way he listened, and the way he remembered small details, and the way his eyes softened when she entered a room. And Alara saw him, not the power, not the wealth, the man. One cool, golden evening, as they were preparing to leave the foundation office. Alara hesitated. There was a kind of trembling in her hands, the kind born not from fear but vulnerability. "Adrian," she began, voice gentle, "there's someone I'd like you to meet." He turned to her, listening intently as always. "My mother. She hasn't been strong enough to leave the house lately." She looked down, collecting herself. "You've been helping us a lot without asking anything in return. I want her to meet the man who's been making her smile again." Adrian's heart warmed. "I would be honored," he said. There was no dramatic music, no foreshadowing suspicion. Only a soft, unknowing step toward fate. The house was small, not poor but modest in the way of people who learned to make a little stretch a long way. There were framed pictures on the walls. Laughter frozen in time. Curtains washed by hand. The smell of warm herbs lingering in the air. Alara led him down a quiet hallway. "She's awake today," she whispered. "She'll be happy to meet you." Adrian smiled, steady and warm, but when Alara opened the door, the world stopped. There, lying on a simple bed with sunlight resting softly across her face, was Miriam. Her hair streaked with gray, her body thinner, gentler. But her eyes were exactly the same. They widened. Not in surprise, but in recognition. "Adrian?" Her voice was weak, but sure. His breath shattered. "Miriam." The memories, the storm, the hospital, the promise, crashed over him all at once. Alara looked between them, confused, unaware. Adrian stepped forward slowly, as though approaching something sacred. He lowered himself to his knees beside her bed. His voice broke as he spoke. "I never forgot you." Miriam's eyes grew wet, not with pain, but with a quiet, overflowing relief. "You lived," she whispered. "That was enough thanks for me." Adrian swallowed hard, guilt and love and gratitude tangling inside him. "No," he said, voice trembling. "It wasn't enough. You saved my life. You believed in me when I had nothing, not even hope. I owed you everything, and I disappeared." A tear slid down Miriam's cheek. "My son," she breathed, reaching for his hand with a trembling one. "You didn't disappear. You became. That is worth more than any thank you." Alara's eyes filled, the truth unfolding slowly, beautifully. "You were the man," she whispered. "The man she told me about all these years." Adrian turned to her, stunned. "And you," his voice broke, "are her daughter." Alara nodded, tears falling freely now. The room felt full, not of sorrow, but of something profound. Fate, grace. The circle of kindness closing gently, perfectly. Adrian looked at Miriam again, not as a billionaire, not as a powerful man, but as the young man she once held together with nothing but compassion. "I didn't come back then," he said softly. "But I am here now, and I'm not leaving." Miriam smiled, tired, gentle, hopeful. The day Adrian recognized Miriam, something changed in him, quietly but completely. For years he had lived with a thriving empire but a restless heart. Now the unfinished promise of his past had found its way back to him, not as guilt but as purpose. From that moment forward, Adrian became a constant in Alara and Miriam's lives. He visited daily, he brought fresh flowers, books, warm blankets. Not gifts of wealth, but gifts of care. He sat beside Miriam as she rested, reading to her, sometimes simply holding her hand in silence. And Miriam began to regain color in her world. But her condition was serious. Years of delayed treatments had worn her body thin. Alara tried to carry everything alone, the medications, the doctors, the worry, until Adrian gently placed his hand over hers one evening and said, "Let me help." She wanted to refuse. She was used to fighting alone. But this time, she allowed someone in. Within days, Adrian arranged for Miriam to be transferred to one of the finest medical centers in the country. Specialists reviewed her case, tailored treatment plan was designed. For the first time in a long time, hope felt possible. And yet, while Miriam rested in a private hospital room with soft music and gentle light, not everyone shared Adrian's heart. Victor Dane, Adrian's business partner, was a man who saw the world in numbers, not people. When he learned of the expenses, the emergency transfers, the private specialists being flown in, he stormed into Adrian's office. "What is all of this?" Victor demanded. "You're draining company funds. For what? One patient? One stranger?" Adrian's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "She's not a stranger." Victor scoffed. "You're letting your emotions ruin your judgment. The board will tear you apart if they find out." Adrian stood, slowly, powerfully. "Let them," he said. "Money can be made again. Companies can be rebuilt. But the people who save us don't come twice in a lifetime." Victor stared at him. Disbelief, then contempt. Adrian's voice dropped to a calm that carried thunder. "She is the reason I am alive. And I will not abandon her." Victor went behind Adrian's back. He tried to freeze funding to the medical foundation, cut support to the hospital account, stop the treatment payments, and even attempted to have Elara removed from the foundation on technical grounds. Elara received the notice one morning and broke down, the fear of losing everything returning like a storm. But she didn't cry because of the job. She cried because she finally realized people can be cruel to those who choose love over profit. Adrian found her sitting alone in the foundation's hallway, holding the letter, tore the letter in half and tossed it away. "You're not going anywhere," he said, voice steady as bedrock. She looked up, eyes trembling. "Why are you doing all this?" Her voice broke. Adrian inhaled slowly, then spoke the truth he had carried for years. "Because your mother saved my life when I had nothing. And because you gave me back the part of myself I lost along the way." Elara's tears fell, but this time they were soft. Not grief, not fear, but understanding. The board called an emergency vote. Victor expected to win, to remove Adrian as CEO. But Adrian walked into that boardroom not as a billionaire, not as a businessman, but as a man who finally understood what real wealth was. He spoke simply. "I have built this company to change lives. If we lose that purpose, then the company is worth nothing. If I must leave to protect the values that built this place, then I will walk out the door right now." One by one, board members lowered their eyes. Victor was voted out. Adrian remained. Sometimes strength is not in raising a voice, but in standing still. Over the next months, Miriam began to heal. Her voice grew stronger. Her color returned. She laughed again, softly at first, then fully, freely. Adrian and Elara would sit with her at the hospital garden, where sunlight warmed her face and breeze danced through her hairpoint. One afternoon, Miriam placed her hands over theirs. "You two," she whispered with a smile, "found each other long before you realized it." They smiled, shy, warm, full. Not rushed love. Not dramatic love. Just love that grew naturally from gratitude, care, and time. Months later, a new building stood proudly, bright, clean, filled with hope. The Miriam Kalu Wellness Center. Free treatment for the poor. Training programs for young nurses. Shelter for families who could not afford hospital stays. Elara became its director. Miriam walked its halls, alive to witness her legacy. Adrian stood beside them, not as a savior, but as family.